everybody, welcome to Nature School. My name is Miss Melissa and today we are going to talk about squirrels. Everyone has seen a squirrel before, right? Whether you've looked outside your classroom window or your window at your house or driving down the road, I am sure you have seen a squirrel. And squirrels are pretty funny little creatures to watch. They are some of the most acrobatic animals that you'll ever see. They can climb trees and jump from tree to tree and kind of swing and hang on to a tree. They're pretty amazing. And did you know that we have 4 types of squirrels here in Ohio? 4! I know. That's a lot, isn't it? So the one that you're usually going to see, or that most people have seen, is called a fox squirrel. And this is a fur from a fox squirrel. So this is what they look like. You can tell that they have like this reddish color fur, especially on their belly and on their tail. That's a good way to know that you're seeing a fox squirrel. They're also the biggest squirrel that we have here in Ohio. So they're a decent sized squirrel. So these are those pudgy ones that you see either along the side of the road or when you're walking through the woods. We have plenty of these right here at Osborne Metro Park where I'm at today, but they're also in all of our other parks too. Squirrels are amazing animals because what do they like to eat? Nuts, for the most part. I mean, they eat seeds and other things in the summertime, but this time of year in the fall, they are looking for nuts, and lots of them. In the fall and end of summer, they're gonna start to gather a bunch of nuts to store for the winter. And where they store them, if they store them in a big pile, that's called a cache, C-A-C-H-E. And some squirrels, they will go around and they'll dig little holes throughout the woods and they'll stick their nuts down in there and cover them back up, and then they'll find them throughout the winter. So that's one way that squirrels are pretty amazing, is they're just gathering all the food that they can to survive the winter time. They're also going to eat a lot this time of year to try to kind of bulk up and get some good fat on them so that they're able to stay warm throughout the winter time. Another thing that squirrels are doing this time of year is they're having their second set of babies. Squirrels usually have 2 sets of babies. The first set is usually born in the early springtime, and then the mom raises those babies, and then once they're old enough and they can be out on their own, she then has her second set. The difference with the second set is they stay with mom all year or throughout the winter. So she'll have her babies in fall, and then they'll stay with her all winter long because they don't have a chance to gather up all those nuts. So she helps to gather up all those nuts and help to feed her babies throughout the year while they learn how to do it. And then next spring, they'll be on their own and she'll have her next set of babies. Isn't that neat? Isn't that cool how different times of year when they're born that they're able to protect their babies in different ways? Pretty cool. Okay. The other type of squirrel that you'll see around here is called a gray squirrel. So this is a gray squirrel. Gets its name because it looks gray. They're a little bit smaller than our fox squirrel. So if I hold these up next to each other, you can see gray squirrels are just a little bit smaller than fox squirrels. Not much, but just a little bit. Gray squirrels, you do find these in all the woods around here. They're pretty much everywhere. They're just a little bit harder to spot since they're smaller. Another thing is, have you ever heard somebody say that they've seen a black squirrel before? Black squirrels are actually gray squirrels. They're melanistic, which is the opposite of being albino. So albino means that you're all white and you have no color. Melanistic means that you're really dark. So black squirrels are gray squirrels, they're just really dark. It's also a dominant trait, which means that when gray squirrels have their babies and they're melanistic, that trait will most likely pass on to the next generation. They've also found that melanistic gray squirrels are much more aggressive than the other gray squirrels, and they'll tend to push the other squirrels out of their area. So where you're gonna see the melanistic grays, you're gonna see a lot of them probably. When squirrels build a nest, they'll either have a nest inside a cavity, so a hole in an old dead tree, or they might make something called a dray, which is a big pile of leaves up in a tree. So I'm sure you've seen in the wintertime, just like a weird pile of leaves on the end of a tree branch up in a tree. That's a squirrel dray or a squirrel nest. When their babies are born, they are completely hairless. They have no hair on them, they're pink, and they're pretty tiny, and their eyes are closed. When they're about 3 or 4 weeks old, their bottom teeth, their bottom front 2 teeth, start to come up. And then when they're about 5 or 6 years old is when their eyes start to open. And then when they're about 10 weeks old, they pretty much look like a regular squirrel, just smaller. So they have that bushy tail. They're able to climb around and run around like crazy little squirrels. Another squirrel that we have here in Ohio, which is probably the funniest squirrel that we have, they're red squirrels, which I don't have a fur of those, but they're pretty small. They have reddish fur. They have a white belly though, and they're really fast. If you've ever seen a red squirrel, they're running around like crazy. It's almost like they drink a lot of coffee and then they just go crazy. So if you've ever seen a red squirrel, let me know and tell me if they were as crazy as I think they look when I see them. Squirrels, they have really sharp teeth. So for them to be able to break into those nuts, they have to have super sharp teeth. Their teeth also constantly grow, so they have to chew on things to help to file them down. Just like we would file down our nails or trim our nails, squirrels have to do that. But do they have a nail file? Nope. What do you think they use? They have to use, they might chew on trees, they might chew on rocks, but their favorite thing to chew on are deer antlers that have fallen off for the wintertime. Yeah. So that's how they kind of help to file down those teeth, to keep them nice and sharp and at the right length for them to be able to eat correct. The last squirrel in Ohio, which you're probably thinking, there's more? The last squirrel that we have in Ohio is one that you probably have never seen in the wild. They come out at nighttime, whereas these other squirrels, they come out during the daytime. They're pretty small. They live in holes in old dead trees in a cavity, and they live in colonies, so there can be a whole bunch of them in one tree. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? A flying squirrel! Have you ever seen a flying squirrel before? Guess what flying squirrels can't do? They can't fly. They glide. So what they do is they run up to the top of a tree, and they have skin that attaches from their wrist all the way down to their ankle, and they jump off and they spread their arms and their legs, and they glide as far as they can. They can actually glide up to about 150 feet. They kind of look like a parachute. And their tail is different than other squirrel tails. It's completely flat. Yeah. So other squirrels, their tails are big and bushy, right? And they kind of flick them and do all sorts of stuff with them. A flying squirrel's tail is flat, but they use it as a rudder. And so that helps them to steer. It also helps them to slow down and stop as they come up to that tree. So instead of slamming into that tree, they're able to slow themselves down and grab onto the side. Now I know you probably think I'm lying, but flying squirrels are our most common squirrel in Ohio. There's more of those than there are of fox squirrel and gray squirrel and red squirrels. Yeah. Remember how I said they live in colonies? So there can be 15 to 30 of them in just one tree. And one way you can find out if you have flying squirrels, even in your backyard or in the woods as you're walking through, is you look for nuts, and you find nuts that have this nice perfect hole chewed into it. That's how you know you have flying squirrels. The other squirrels will destroy the nut and make a huge mess, but flying squirrels chew this perfect hole to get that treat out. I don't know if you can see, but you can kind of see the the tiny little teeth marks that are scraping through there too. Pretty neat, huh? So I want you to go outside and look around your yard or at your grandparents' yard or out in the woods and see if you can find any of these, okay? And then you know that there's probably flying squirrels around. You can also go outside if you have a bunch of trees in your backyard, and you can shine a flashlight up into the trees. If you have flying squirrels, you'll see a whole bunch of little beady eyes looking back at you, which is kind of creepy but also really cool. Remember how we talked about earlier how squirrels will dig a hole and put their nuts down there and then cover them back up and come back for them later? Do you think that they remember where they put every single one of those nuts for later? I don't think so. Do you remember where you put your shoes last night? Sometimes it's hard to remember that. So the nuts that squirrels forget, it's actually really good. Squirrels are probably one of the most important things to have in a forest because they're planting new trees. Those nuts that they forgot about will grow into a new tree in the springtime. So they just planted a seed every time that they put a nut in the ground. So if they remember it, it's great because then they get food. If they forget it, that's great too because then a new tree grows. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed learning about squirrels today, and I hope you go out and see if you can find any squirrels, especially this time of year as they're gathering up all their nuts for the winter. And I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.